And speaking of fiscal mismanagement, the International Monetary Fund or the IMF has a message for the Maldives. Your debt levels are too high, and this is not their first warning. The IMF raised the same issue in the month of February as well. The question is Male listening? First of all, let's look at the warning. An IMF team visited the Maldives this year. They assessed the national economy. They looked at key indicators and spoke to local officials. After that, they published a financial assessment. Look at what it says. Without significant policy changes, the Maldives remains at high risk of external and overall debt distress. This is what the IMF is saying. And what exactly is debt distress? When a country is unable to repay its loans, so either the loan has to be forgiven or it has to be restructured. Basically, it's a fancy word for being broke. The IMF says the Maldives is at high risk of being in that position. But do we know why? Well, the report mentions two major issues. One is high import prices. The Maldives does not locally produce much. Everything from fuel to food is imported. And commodity prices are high. You have two wars in West Asia and Europe, plus major concerns about supply chains. And the result is this: the Maldives takes loans to import stuff. The second reason is tourism. It makes up almost 1/3 of the Maldivian economy. And the IMF has flagged an issue with it. Again, let me quote from what they've said. Uncertainty surrounding the outlook is high and risks are tilted to the downside, including from delayed fiscal consolidation and weaker growth to key source markets for tourism. This is what the IMF has said in its warning to the Maldives. Let me focus on one point. Weaker growth in key tourism markets. Is that a reference to India? It could very well be. Indian arrivals in the Maldives are down 40% this year. Even their tourism minister is appealing for help. He is asking Indians to visit his country. But is President Mohamed Muizzu aware of these challenges? Doesn't look like it. You see, a big source of Maldivian debt is China. Just look at these numbers. Total foreign debt is more than $3 billion. Around 42% of it is owed to China. Total public debt is much higher. It's almost 118% of the GDP. And their GDP is almost $7 billion. Most of this debt was racked up in the last decade by Muizzu's mentor turned rival, Abdullah Yameen. He was president from 2013 to 2018, and this time he borrowed heavily from China. But it's now Muizzu's job to pay back. And how does he plan to do that? By taking more loans from China. In January, he traveled to Beijing for a 5-day visit. He asked China to restructure existing loans. China said, we'll think about it. But in that same trip, around 21 deals were signed, from digital economy to land reclamation to housing projects and for roads and highways. And here's the catch. We don't know the details of these projects. Chances are it's more loans and debt. Of course, Muizzu does not see a problem here. He says China's assistance is selfless. How about that? Two words I never imagined hearing together, China and selfless. I'm sure Muizzu saw what happened in Sri Lanka. Chinese loans pushed that country into a default. Could the Maldives be going the same way? At this rate, it is quite possible, which is why India should also be worried. Last week, the Maldivian foreign minister visited India. He had a special request for New Delhi, assistance of around $50 million. And India agreed. The State Bank of India has subscribed to a Maldivian treasury bill. It was supposed to mature this year, but the SBI will subscribe again. Basically, they will roll over the $50 million. Their foreign minister was all praises for this gesture. He said it symbolized goodwill and friendship. Talk about a turnaround. In January, President Muizzu called India a bully, and now his foreign minister can't stop praising India. But New Delhi alone cannot fix their problems. The Maldives needs to take stock because we're talking about a fragile economy here. Tourism is not always reliable. And the pandemic has shown us that. And climate change is on the march. Many Maldivian islands are on the front lines. They will be affected by the rising ocean. So the Maldives needs a comprehensive financial strategy, one that is de-linked from politics. If not, the IMF's warnings may come true.